All right, cool. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Matthew Geiger, CEO and co-founder of 71 Republic. I found a lot of great information on their website and, what's going on, current events in the libertarian world. So I was scrolling on your website and I saw at the bottom your tagline is journalism reinvented. Why does journalism need to be reinvented?
Okay, well, we're coming in hot. All right. Well,
Yeah.
first, Brandon, thank you for having me on your show. It's great to be a part of something new. I've never been a part of a podcast before that's in its infancy. So thank you so much for having me. But about the tagline, which is ever evolving, we have multiple different ones. Journalism Reinvented is one of them. We have another one that's called The Third Voice. Um, Legalize the Truth. I can explain all of those, but really they all kind of center around the same theme, which is that the majority of media content that people consume today is heavily biased. There is a lot of malintent that goes into producing such content. They're usually working for someone else's interests that are adversely affecting the American and, quite frankly, the global populace. And so I think journalism needs to be reinvented in a light that explores both the objective side. Like I think there needs to be a revitalization of the Walter Cronkite era where people were straight laced and would tell the story how it really is without any bullshit, quite frankly. But at the same time, I think journalism also needs to be an emotional and deeply intimate experience for people because when you watch whether it's Fox, whether it's CNN, or just like a podcast like this, a lot of mainstream broadcast news today is boring. It's rehashed opinion. It's rehashed content. It's not entertaining. It's not interesting, and it doesn't really dive deep into what is happening in a certain scenario. So what I want to do is reinvent journalism through 71 Republic and have both a platform that has an objective side, a Reuters Associated Press style reporting, but at the same time has a more Vice style of tapping into the culture and the pulse of things. Because I think both of those sides, both ends of the spectrum, like your Walter Cronkite end and then your Hunter S. Thompson end, are not being fully utilized today in American and global media.
Yeah, I love that tweet from you guys. I actually copied it down because we hope that one day 71 Republic can be the embodiment of Walter Cronkite and Hunter S. Thompson,
Yes, yes.
connecting opposite ends of the journalistic spectrum to provide content that people actually want. I really like that because one of the things I have a hard time with is believing that there is an objective journalism out there. I think that everybody has their biases, and on some level, they can't help to bring it in. So, in a way, it's really dishonest when I see people like Fox News and CNN say they're unbiased or they bring you only the facts. I would rather have someone say, "This is what I believe, and this is what I believe to be true," rather than these are absolute truths. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and like a whole bunch of people that were a part of that like Gonzo new journalism era in the 70s and late 60s would totally agree with you. That everybody has their own underlying biases. Even Walter Cronkite, who we've mentioned several times, I think was flirted as a vice presidential nominee for the Democratic Party in 68. So like everybody has, no matter who you are, has a set of biases. And I think that while I would like for 71 Republic to have that objective wing as much as possible, I'm okay with admitting the fact that like we have journalists that have biases. Every entity today has journalists that have biases. Some are more upfront about it than others. And I think it would be fascinating to see what would happen if you had a journalistic entity that said we have bias and let's run with it. But at the same time, like I don't want 71 Republic's bias per se to be pro left, pro right, pro libertarian, pro not libertarian. I want it to be anti establishment. I want it to be targeted at four specific things: people, organizations, governments, and corporations. The four different like pillars of power, if you will. And I want 71 Republic to be an entity that calls people out that are in power. And I want our bias to be supporting people, average people, and attacking the misdeeds and the murky waters of today's elite.
Yeah, I like that. Journalism seems to be more about holding people accountable, and definitely trying to decentralize everything. Um, I would say, as an anarchist, if you watched the previous episode, I was talking to Sal the Agorist, who, when I bring up politics and elections and stuff, he wants to take absolutely no part in it because he thinks that it's an immoral thing. Whereas I kind of take the more pragmatic approach, and I would like to see change, even if it's within an evil institution like the government. How do you think about politics' role and what's going on?
Well, first off, I'm not an anarchist, but there are anarchists at 71 Republic. And 71 Republic obviously is not an anarchist organization. I believe in democracy. I think it can work. I think it has worked before in different ways. I have faith that with the right coalition and the right group of people, that the right sort of legislation can get passed and the right things can be done. Um, like obviously I have a lack of trust in today's government, and I have a lack of faith in its in the way that it works. But at the end of the day, I I love this country, and I think that there is a way for us to make it work. And I really think that while there are a lot of deeply flawed institutions that are part of our government today, I also would say that there is a solid enough framework to which a lot of great things can be done. And I'd also add that like it's like it's not as bad as it seems. Like there as much as like I think 71 Republic is predicated on discussing and targeting, the problems of today. I think that there are I think we've made massive improvements as a human race over the past 100, 200, 300 years since the founding of the United States. And so while there are issues, serious, fundamental, deeply seated issues in this country and in this world, I think that it's better than it has been, and I think we can continue to get better if we have the right group of people to continue calling out those that misuse their power.
Yeah, okay. What do you expect to see from the LP for the general election? Do you think we're going to get a candidate that's more radical, like a lot of the guys that are in the running now, or is it going to be more like Gary Johnson?
I mean, what a lot of people miss by the Libertarian Party is that it is run by people that are very quiet and that don't have a face. What I mean by that is if you go to these libertarian conventions, both state and national, there are a lot of older folks that have been around in politics and in the Libertarian Party for decades, like since the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and they've kind of like they're not active on Facebook. Like it's a very, very small percentage of people in the Libertarian Party that are actually active on Facebook that have a say in the way that things run. And there's this kind of like weird underlying coalition of people that are deeply pragmatic, like very much a Bill Weld type, and they typically they typically say how things go. Although in the past there have been very radical Libertarian Party presidential nominees in the 90s and in the early 2000s. Before Bob Barr, there were radical Libertarian Party nominees. Things have changed over the past 10 years. Personally, although I really don't even think it matters, to be honest with you, David, Brandon, sorry. I don't honestly don't think it matters, but we'll probably end up with someone that is on the more pragmatic end of things, whether that's Justin Amash, Larry Sharp, if he decides to run, and who knows? We don't know all the candidates that are running for the nomination currently. Right now, it's just a small group of radicals. But I don't think the Libertarian Party is as much of a radical entity as people really make it out to be. I think there are a lot of people that are much more pragmatic, that have a greater say in how things run. Although, and I don't want to like overuse this question here, although there is a large groundswell in the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, and that was not as great of an impact as some might have wanted it to be in 2018. but it could be larger in 2020. There are a lot of things that can happen between now and next. I think it's May. So we'll see what happens. But if I had to like put money on it, I guess someone more pragmatic, probably.
Yeah, that's what I would guess too. Yeah, I don't think John McAfee's going to be the candidate.
No, I don't think so.
Unfortunately, I love him. Um, so as far as journalism goes, are you optimistic about what the future holds, or do you see it going more the way of, that bipartisan split that we have now, where it's just two opposing viewpoints and that's all you get?
I think it's always been that way, to be honest, Brandon. I think it's always been two opposing viewpoints. And while there may have been certain generations of journalism that have been better at covering that up, their biases. I think there's always been that split. So before I answer whether or not I'm optimistic, you have to look back at history. Like my local paper, which is now the Carroll County Times, was once called the Democrat in the early 1900s. And like if you look at publications like that were more satirical, like Judge, which was like a New York political cartoon mag. I mean, like these are really partisan. These are really partisan. The journalism has been used as a partisan tool since the very beginning of American history. Like Jefferson, I think it was Adams actually was using political ads in newspapers to like say that Thomas Jefferson was having an affair with his wife. Like this was like the late 1700s, and it was happening. So I don't really think you can say I'm optimistic or not about the future because I think that we're just going to continue down the same road that we've been on for the past 200, 300 years of American history, where like there are definitively in most cases two viewpoints: the majority and then the opposition, the general opposition and the general majority, if you will. Conservative versus liberal is what the dynamic that we have now today.
Mm-hmm.
But where 71 Republic comes into play, and this is kind of how I can segue this, is that I don't think there are a lot of people or a lot of entities or any at all that are doing a good job of bridging that divide. And it's not just like bridging that divide that I think needs to be done. It's actually exploiting the ends of each of those bridges, because what happens in politics and specifically in presidential elections is after the primaries, there's this race to the center where all the candidates,
Yes.
two candidates, try to become as centrist as possible to appeal to as many voters as possible. Even someone as quote, I guess, radical as Donald Trump during the primary season in 2015 still raced to the center in 2016 when he was the Republican Party nominee, and dropped a lot of his previous campaign stances, their promises or statements that he had made in the past. So I'm not like dismayed. I'm not optimistic either. I think that the reason why I'm doing 71 Republic is because if no one else does, I might as well do it myself.
Yeah.
But I guess it's just
Yeah.
as simple as that. I mean, that's just how I feel about the current climate.
Right. Well, you are right in that it's always been, those two opposing viewpoints, and it's always been dirty. They've always been at war with each other. I think a lot of people don't get that. There's never been a real playing nice, and people have this idea of like a respectable journalism, and I really just don't think it exists. It's more of just getting everything done. But what I love now and why I'm optimistic about the future of journalism is simply because of the internet. We have guys like Nick Monroe on Twitter and just live streaming things as they're happening, and so that way we can get a more objective look at what's going on. Um, 30 years ago, if Trump were president and he said something crazy like he always does, and then CNN goes and cuts up what he says, that's all you would get. You would just see CNN's version of it. But now you can actually see what he says live. And I'm always baffled that like these institutions are still around, because they repeatedly just bold-faced lie, and you can look it up and see what someone actually said. So I think it's really cool that 71 Republic is being started in an age that understands this, because other organizations will try and get away with things that just won't fly today.
Mm-hmm.
So what I was wondering about you guys at 71 Republic, are you interested in doing more like live on the spot journalism?
Yeah. As much as today it's as inexpensive as it ever has been to do those things, it still has a cost. And we have about 50 kids from Lebanon to Brazil to Poland to the United States. And so like we have a really vast network of students and writers and contributors, but still like there's the missing element, which I think is the live element. I think there needs to be more live streams, there needs to be more video coverage of events and audio coverage too. And it's something that we've explored in that could potentially happen in the future. Right now, we're really focused on making sure that we have the best possible content that we're putting out currently. And a big thing for us is quality over quantity. So I think
Yeah.
that I think right now we could definitely do a lot of live coverage, but a big thing for us is like making sure that we have all of the boxes checked before we decide that we're going to go ahead and do this, because when we decide we're going to go with this live coverage and this video coverage, it is much easier to give something to someone than it is to take it away. And I don't want to have a lot of readers upset and viewers upset that we are providing a service that we're then revoking because we weren't ready in the first place to launch it. We've done test runs before. Like we interviewed Cody Wilson before he was arrested last year. We interviewed Scott Horton, Max Borders, Elizabeth Goons. We've interviewed, and these are really high quality video interviews, and they look professional, and because we want to be, and we think we are a professional news company, but we still have some work to do. I think in the future, though, I want 71 Republic to be, I want a huge part of it to be video. I hope that one day 71 Republic can be an art form. Right now, our only form of art is writing. I want to see more videos. I want to see animations, cartoons, graphics, designs, essays, poems, free verse writing. I want to see a whole array of stories, right? Because there shouldn't just be one prescribed method of consuming content. Because to be honest, how many people actually read articles besides the headline? And it's something that we've really worked to develop our writing. Like I think our writing has significantly improved since we started 71 Republic 2 years ago. But I definitely want to get more into the audiovisual end of things for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I can see you guys being, yeah, just all over every type of media. But one of the things I do really like about you guys is that you are quality over quantity. I've actually learned a lot from reading articles on your site, and I am an absolute news junkie. One
Thank
thing
you.
I,
Appreciate it.
yeah, well, one thing I saw today was Andrew Yang on crypto. I had no idea that he was pushing to regulate Bitcoin,
Mm-hmm.
and the article does a fantastic job at first bringing up universal basic income, because that's all anybody knows about Andrew Yang is he's the UBI guy,
Yeah.
and then it goes into detail on why he wants to tax and regulate Bitcoin, and so if you're thinking I'm going to vote for him because of UBI or whatever, I mean, think twice. This guy wants to just have complete government control over completely new markets, which is insane. But most of your articles are pro free market, pro free speech, pro Second Amendment, all of that. How does that affect the news side of things?
Yeah. So, definitely right now we're in a phase of 71 Republic's growth and development where we have a lot more opinion, and it sometimes does lean more a certain way than we'd like. We'd 100% want more diversity, both of content and opinion. So we're working to build that. But right now, I guess our biggest offer and attraction to mostly students, but really to anybody with a voice, is that we will publish you. There's a lot of mainstream organizations, both news and social media alike, that will prevent someone's message from being heard. And 71 Republic, for the most part, is accepting and welcoming to almost every ideology that promotes freedom and promotes the equality of people to a general extent, right? And so, what we offer right now is letting kids come in and having this voice that they feel like has been silenced, And right now that leads more towards the opinion end of things. A lot of kids have some seriously strong opinions that they have not been able to say publicly that they want to be able to say publicly. So we provide that service right now. What we're trying to do is we're trying to find people that are just as passionate about opinion as we are about journalism. So we've been looking for kids, kind of like the ones that are like, I'm super passionate about guns or crypto or the drug war or just war in general. We want to find kids that are like, I am super passionate about telling the truth and investigating these corrupt organizations and these corrupt people, and I want to expose. I want to uncover the truth. I want to uncover media, and that's what I want us to do. And so we're gonna look for kids like that, and in hopes that we get a whole core of kids. And when I say kids, I mean anyone. Right now we're heavily leaning towards that youth end of the spectrum. You can be as old as it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. We want to hear from you, and so we want to find people that are energized and passionate about telling the truth and the story, just as much as we are about opinion. But as of right now, we've only been able to find those people that are passionate about opinion. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Yeah. Have you got any sort of hate online?
Yeah, it's happened.
Yeah. I love hearing about that.
Yeah. I don't have too many opportunities to talk about 71 Republic on like this sort of stage where I get to just kind of say whatever and like represent the company. So I don't really get to tell these stories. But 71 Republic in its infancy was much more of a libertarian party news site than it was what it is today, which is this vision of a greater, more objective, also more culturally deep entity. And the reason why that changed is because we did a lot of truth telling, in my opinion, on the Libertarian Party. We would uncover certain things that people wanted to be left covered. We would cover just regular news, and there were a lot of people in the Libertarian Party, and I've had conversations with other people that are in quote libertarian media, which I think 71 Republic is exiting. But I've had conversations with other people, and a lot of it centers around like, oh, they're just the hate is like them liking you, but it's hard for you to tell. And I never really liked it. Like there were some days early on in 71 Republic's history where like I feel like we published a good piece. People would be really upset about it, and it was just a constant string of hate. Like I'd have to turn my phone off because it'd be like notification after notification after notification. And it's like, dude, give me a break. Like we're telling the truth here. Like we're not like it was frustrating. It was extremely frustrating. So 71 Republic has moved on from that stage. But a lot of our hate today comes from people that just disagree with like an opinion piece. We published, and like it's not nearly as bad as it used to be. And honestly, at this point, I kind of like it because it's fun to read. But yeah, we published this piece today. It was like why neoconservatism is dangerous for America's future. And we're on Parlay, which is like this, or Parler, I think, however you pronounce it, but just like this new Twitter that is like not.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that.
And we were the first. We were like the first company to integrate with Parlay, and this was before a lot of conservatives came on there. And I'm still concerned about like the amount of conservatives on the app, but for the most part, it's a good app as of right now. It might change in the future. Don't hold that against me. But just to finish up here, like we published that piece today. And we had like so many people come on there like, the conservative movement stands for God, liberty, and guns, and if you don't like it, you can leave. Or it's like, or it was we also had one person that's like, neoconservatism, like all these new terms, I don't get it. And it's great because like we publish conservative voices, we publish conservative kids at 71 Republic just as much as we publish liberal kids. And it's always funny to see the dynamic because like the people that hate on us from the left are so much different than the people that hate on us from the right. And it's just fun to watch. Really it is.
Yeah, there was a comment I saw on one of your articles. I'm just these people are everywhere. It was something about some article about immigration or something, and someone just posted, wrong. It's Zionist Jews who are destroying America by pushing open borders and their white genocide agenda. And then my favorite thing about the anti-Semites is they always have little pictures of some Jewish professor and then a quote. And then the quote is like, the goal of abolishing the white race is on its face desirable that some may find it hard to believe that it could incur any opposition other than from committed white supremacists. We intend to keep bashing the dead white males and the live ones. And it goes on and on for like paragraph after paragraph.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm always just left wondering, like, where do these people come from? But they always seem to be reading every single article, or at least finding the articles and posting on them.
Yeah. They definitely look for something to be mad at. I'm Jewish myself, so I fit the whole stereotypical bill of like Jewish person owning media company, right? So I've never actually been like bothered by that. Like I've been scared at times, like when the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh was shot up and things like that. Like that is scary because that's when like those like harmless comments they transcend a harmless platform and go into real life, and that's scary. And the same thing for Christchurch with like the people of the Muslim faith. Like that is scary.
Yeah.
But this extrapolates to a greater conversation, right? Because those comments on Twitter, Facebook, wherever they were, they're harmless. Like I'll take someone's like butchered quote off of Twitter any day over someone killing 20 people. And I think I think a big problem today, and this is like why I think a media company that truly like touches and has a pulse on the culture of the most disgusting and at the same time most mainstream elements of society is important, because like the alt-right and people that are anti-Semitic, people that are racist, homophobic, bigoted, whatever, that kind of like coalesce in this cesspool, they are all emboldened when they are censored. Whenever someone is silenced, they always believe that what they were saying must not be heard for the reason that it is too powerful. John Stuart Mill wrote a really good piece, really good essay called On Liberty. I don't know the quote off of my head verbatim, but basically it said that an opinion, that if all of society but one man was of an opinion, they had no right to silence that one man, so much as that one man did not have the right to silence the rest of society. And that the only way you can prove something wrong is when it comes into conflict with error. I would like to see much more people engaging in dialogue with alt-right people on Twitter and just straight up roasting them, because people would see this. There's just not enough dialogue happening. It's a one-sided narrative. And so all of the alt-right goes in their little corner on 4chan or wherever, and then they feel emboldened by it. They just gather together and it becomes their own echo chamber, and things spiral out of control. And then you have Christchurch and so on. And I just think that like we need to have a much greater dialogue instead of like alt-right bad. Like it is bad. It is a disgusting movement that should not exist. But people should be talking about why, not just because it is bad, but how it is bad and why it is bad, and engage in dialogue with those people and have open discussion. Instead of open discussion, I mean, instead of gunshots, we need to have people sitting down at the table and having conversations. So much more important. And I think it's not happening in media as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what happens is people like that, they have these inbred ideas that never get challenged and they never grow that way. If someone were to, shut them down immediately by saying, hey, this is what's wrong with your idea, it would force them to think instead of just, finding somebody that agrees with them.
Mm-hmm.
And often people will bring up the internet and be like, well, it's just an echo chamber. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think like what you're saying is when you censor people, they tend to go together. But with the internet, there's so many ideas out there now. If it weren't for online, I could have never discovered Murray Rothbard or Walter Block, or maybe not even Ayn Rand. And these ideas I discovered all online. If it weren't for that, I would have been presented with left and right, and that's it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I think politics has become more interesting and more dynamic over the past decade or so because of the advent of the internet. Even in the 90s, like if you watch old, and there's always been underground opinion. Like there's always been like the Gore Vidals of the world. There's always been like this like kind of counterculture rubbing up against the grain of society.
Right, yeah, but now it's not hard to find.
It's not hard to find, and
Yeah.
there's a much greater cultural discussion, which I think is good. It's not, but the problem is, and like this is again, Brandon, like why 71 Republic exists. We have people that are older, like one of my favorite writers at 71 Republic, Spencer Kellogg. He's 30, 31, 32, and like he's lived, and I like this is the thing is like as simple as this may sound to a lot of people that are older than I guess both of us on here, but like Spencer like had waking moments and cognizant moments in an era before 9/11. So like just the way that like the world has changed over the past
Yeah.
20, 30 years is just so monumental and so just diverse and crazy, and it's hard to wrap your mind around, and I can't because I didn't experience a world before me. So I think we're entering into an age where I think politics and culture can become more dynamic, and the conversations can evolve from the basement to the front stage. And the best ideas can win. I'm just hoping that like mainstream, and I hope 71 Republic becomes mainstream, obviously, but that I hope current mainstream entities and organizations embrace this new culture and embrace the free market of ideas, if you will, instead of just continuing on the same path that we have been for so long.
Yeah. All right. Well, I got one last question for you. It's what I ask all my guests. Let's say you're God and you can make everyone read and understand one book on a deep fundamental level. Which book do you choose and why?
Okay. I have this book in my room called it's just a collection of E. Cummings poems. It's from 1922 to 1936. There's no title page, there's no dedication. You don't know when it's published. It's just basically a blank book with the poems. And I think it's like one of the most powerful things I've ever read. His poetry, his free verse style is like so just impactful. I know it's unrelated to the whole political conversation that we've been having over the past half an hour, but
No, it could be anything.
but like a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people are lost because they don't truly understand themselves, and I don't think anybody truly understands themselves to a point. I think the idea that there are two classifications of people, that there is a group of people that know what they're doing and people that don't know what they're doing, I think that's a lie. I think that no one has any idea what they're doing, but it is a saga of embracing things that are just human experiences and understanding that like your feelings are valid and that you're not alone in experiences that you go through. I think that like understanding that book is the key to understanding yourself better. And so I recommend that everybody at least finds an E. Cummings poem of some sort. He's one of my favorite poets, and just read. Just read. Just take some time on an evening when it's raining and just read.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Matthew. Everybody, check out 71 Republic, and I will link the Patreon in the show notes page.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem.